Thanks, Ken. One thing I'll just start off with is, I don't know about you guys, but I've been impressed with everybody who spoke today. You know, to bring this number of experts into one room, and every one of you guys have insights and knowledge and expertise like nowhere else in the country today. So I'd give you all a hand, but maybe give yourself a hand or whatever. But it's impressive to see the expertise that we have here and the level of knowledge that you guys bring to the table. So with that, glad to be here today and to speak about digital transformation for infrastructure. We've got a great panel, and we've got a number of distinguished speakers that are going to be going here. And so maybe what we'll do is start off with introductions. And Marty, if you want to start off and just introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll go down the road.
Check. There we go. Thanks, Matt. Too close to the speaker, pardon me. Yes, thanks, Matt. Marty Turner, I'm Vice President of Project Controls for Hill International for the Americas Group. A 30-year professional in the industry, a long-time advocate of a successful project delivery. So I'll keep it brief so we can make it through.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darrell Daniel. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Houston Airport System. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the airport system, it's comprised of George Bush Intercontinental, which those of you that came in may have flown into. Intercontinental is, pre-COVID, was literally one of only a handful of airports that had direct nonstop service to all 6 populated continents. William P. Hobby Airport on the southeast side of town, which the rest of you, if you flew in, probably flew into. It is one of only 16, maybe 17 airports in the world that is 5-star rated by Skytrax as of about a month ago. And then our third airport is Ellington Field, which is home of the Houston Spaceport. It's the only certified spaceport in a metropolitan area, home of Axiom Space, Intuitive Machines, Collins Aerospace. They're all breaking ground there right now. So pretty excited to talk to you about the airport system.
Sure. Joe Everly, I'm the Vice President of Program and Project Management for Trimble. I've spent the last 15 years helping many organizations, including many in the room, transform the way they manage and track and report on the capital programs that you all put in place.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Syed Mehdi. I'm the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at San Antonio Airport. It's a relatively big airport. Pre-COVID, we handled 10 million passengers. We're running out of space. We've put together a master plan, and next stage would be going into detailed design for terminals, and then we'll be having a brand new terminal all going well by the end of this decade. So, yeah, making sure that I'm right on time. And the year. So, before we really talk about anything else, let's talk what digital transformation for airports are. Many of you may remember, not everyone in this room, but many of you may remember going to the print room and picking up an ammonia print, that blueprint, and that smell. I only remember that from my college days. After that, then I was on AutoCAD all the way through. But that was the industry 1.0, going all paper, pencils, sketches. There's been transformation, there's been evolution of how we visualize things. AutoCAD of various versions. I've lost track of where AutoCAD is nowadays, and there's something else I'm sure. By the way, I've left engineering, moved into planning and more of overseeing planning, so I don't know what happens in AutoCAD now, other than just seeing the drawings. Then, moving further on, there's been a trend of evolution. Today, we are more onto the visualization using VR technology. It's all, you put your headsets, you look around, and you can see everything in 3D. It's no longer trying to see on a 2D map, on a 2D plan, and then figure out where does this pipe go, where does this column go. So things have evolved a lot on digital transformation. And that's also being visioned, that's also being seen on the terminal side, how passengers are being processed, which is having an impact on how we plan our facilities, how we design our facilities. Do we still require that bank of check-in desks with a whole lot of people? Or is it just check-in desk, you just go, you drop your bag and you walk out without interacting with anyone? You just walk all the way through up to your aircraft gate without interacting with anyone. So that all is today at Airport 4.0. We still here in the United States haven't got to that level. There are some airports with, I won't say totally, but some terminals within some airports elsewhere in the world, Frankfurt, Singapore, Heathrow, where you can walk all the way through without interacting with anyone. So on that basis, what are we seeing? Where are we seeing? What's happening in the digital transformation front on infrastructure, on facilities management, on operations and maintenance? That is what I thought I'll discuss for a short while, and that is your new concept of airport digital twinning. What does that mean? Basically, you got your terminal. For instance, this room, you've got this room over here. You create a twin of this on a computer model. Every system that you have over here is replicated on your model. All of those systems now have sensors. You are constantly monitoring those sensors. Basically, not you, but your computer is constantly monitoring your sensors, looking at the usage, looking at the electric consumption. If it's on 100 cycle you change, it's informing you how many cycles each of those pieces of equipment have worked on. So that is a continuous evolution. What's going to be the impact at airports for us? Terminals, today Hong Kong has created a digital twin. They are monitoring all of their operations, maintenance and facilities using digital twinning. It's gate management. So by doing so, you are efficiently using your gates. What happens in an airport like ours? Southwest leases the gate. The gate is theirs forever. We do put in some level of usage to say you've got to use it for five turns a day or 5 operations a day. But if they're not using it efficiently, they will come back to us to say we need an additional gate. That is then putting a dent on our pockets as well as everyone else's pockets, because it's got to be paid by the entire airport user group. So by having a digital twin, you can constantly monitor how it's being used. You can monitor your ramp operations. By monitoring ramp operations, you are now efficiently using your assets and your infrastructure. Then there are lots of other things that you can do using digital twins. You can efficiently use your facilities. You can have a holistic view of what's happening at your airport. You can, instead of having paper as-built, now you have an electronic as-built in a 3D view. And in addition to that, then you put in your asset management plans, you put in your infrastructure plans and everything. So there are lots of organizations that are providing these services, but how many airports have adopted this? I wouldn't say any. Probably something's happening at Houston. Maybe, Daryl, you can talk about it, or maybe not. The new terminal at LaGuardia, maybe they have put that in. I haven't really got to the depth of what they have put it in. However, that is happening elsewhere, and this is an opportunity for you all to look into how do you enhance the way you're working, the efficiency of what you're doing through digital twinning. How much time do I have? So you think
I think we're good for now, and then we'll move to the next speaker, and we'll pick it back up here in a bit. So Daryl, Sayed's just talked about the digital twin and the digital transformation process, and one of the things I think you were going to talk about is how this might impact the passenger, right? I get to the airport, what difference does it make for me? So.
Sure, absolutely, and that's a great segue, because I could have spoken about safety and security operations. I did choose to speak about the passenger experience. I kind of threw this together, and this is a bit of a mouthful, but I call this the connective tissue of airports and invisible thread of the passenger experience, I started looking around at the collagen bundle and what it does in the body and how similar that was to fiber. You know, and I want to also say that when we talk about technology infrastructure, traditionally, you know, that always has been the wired side of the business. Obviously, we've been moving into the RF spectrum for decades now, and this is, you know, increasing exponentially. You know, big part of that is is what's happening with 5G, CBRS. Probably the topic for another panel, another time, but if anyone wants to talk about interference between C-band and radio altimeters, I'm happy to have that discussion with you outside. But it's something that we're definitely looking at. But you know, the point being that, you know, even though I've got, you know, these fiber bundles on this slide, it's definitely enabling us with the RF spectrum. The other comment I will make is, you know, as an airport community, we did a pretty poor job of taking advantage of the situation we're in with COVID. You know, what better time to go out and tear up your airports and rebuild terminals? Unfortunately, not all, but most of the programs did shut down during COVID. But one of the challenges that we got, and this is something that Syed is going to encounter in San Antonio, is in some of the solutions he's talking about, like the common use gates to address capacity solutions. You know, we don't have the you know, the luxury of tearing down a terminal and rebuilding it because we just don't have the gate capacity. So, you know, I'll give you an example. Intercontinental, we're in an international terminal redevelopment program right now. The new pier is going to open in 23, new passenger processor in 24. These programs take a long time. We're about to start a domestic redevelopment program, Terminal A at Intercontinental, which is primarily where all the non-United carriers are. That facility is 50 years old. So, but we don't have the luxury of just tearing it down, taking all those gates out of service. And so how do we put, you know, the technology infrastructure into place? A lot of it is using that RF spectrum. But I wanted to focus a little bit on that passenger experience. I talked a lot about, in my intro, about Hobby being a 5-star airport and why this is important. That ranking is all about the passenger experience. And it's interesting, you know, everyone knows that Texas is a huge economic engine. There are a number of companies that are moving to Texas. We certainly believe that one of the things they're looking at is, you know, what does that airport infrastructure look like? Where can I go from that airport? What is the you know, what is the passenger experience like? So we're using you know, smart networks for things like, and it's not just the airport experience, it's how you get to the airport. So you know, Carol Haddock from Public Works spoke earlier. You know, she's one of our partners. We're both city departments. We did some adaptive traffic management for entering the airport, and we monitor and we adapt. You know, the curbside is another issue. You know, we monitor that through video analytics, and we react to that. The check-in process, like Syed mentioned, we are going to curb the gate, 100% biometric. You know, all digital biometric processing. And you know, before you get overly concerned, it's an opt-in process. It's not mandated, and I know a lot of people are concerned about Big Brother watching you. I would be much less concerned about the government, and I'd be much more concerned about Facebook and Google if they're in here. But anyway, it's an opt-in program. Security checkpoint. This is another place where that's probably the biggest stress point for the passenger. You know, you just want to know, can I get to the airport on time? Can I get to that checkpoint and relax? So we monitor those queue processes through the smart infrastructure. When you look at you know, ratings of airports, the two primary things people rate them on traditionally have been the restrooms and the Wi-Fi. Houston, we led in both development and implementation of smart restroom technology. So that's another place we manage. Where I'm going with all of this, though, is, you know, this is all very, very data dependent. We have to have robust networks for it. But it's not only having the data, which in some cases we don't. Where can we get it? It's taking that data and being able to render it into usable information. And to me, the most important thing for this process is how can I monitor and react in real time? So that's what all of these initiatives that I'm talking about mean. And like Syed said, in a lot of ways, common use, biometrics. Domestically, we are behind in the U.S., but we're rapidly catching up. So with that, I think I know we're a bit pressed for time. I'll turn it over to Marty to go from there.
And so Marty, I think it's interesting, we've got a couple of airports on stage with us today because you've seen some breaking news, right?
Yes, as the requisite consultant on the panel, I thought I'd share a little bit of good news and a little bit of bad news. So for those of you that don't know, the US DOT announced today that they're accepting grant applications, $1 million for airport terminal programs and $450 for maritime port renovations. So I think that's it's been on people's radar, but it's an official announcement as of today. So very topical, very timely for this group. I think one of the things for me as a longtime consultant, program manager, project controls guy, technology has really been all over the board in our industry. And I think this huge investment by the federal government into the infrastructure really provides an opportunity to reset, right? And really gives us an opportunity to kind of really set new standards for our software applications, making sure that they're robust, making sure there's interoperability, so that clients are playing the long game, right? They want the project delivery, they need a design, they need a construction, they need a commission, but it's that long game of asset management, facility management that really, protecting those assets for the long haul. After you make this huge capital investment in money and time, it seems senseless to just stop there and go, okay, success, right? You really have to think about the long game and how that all plays out. How do you maintain systems? How do you adapt to change, right? Things are going to change. That's the one constant in our industry, right? Is things, even with major capital programs that are set and planned, what you think you're going to do in the design today, by the time you get to the end and you commission, you're like, wow, we are really far and away from what we started, right? So, but that's what makes it fun, right? So it's exciting and it's a good time to be in the industry. Now for the bad news. Let me see if I can find it. I was trying to stay topical today instead of give you slide presentations. I was reading the news this morning. Let's see. So our friends at PwC did a recent study of 10,000 capital projects, and this is the bad news. So only 2% of the companies completed 100% of their projects on time. So out of 10,000 capital programs, only 2%. So not exactly a stellar track record. PM software stats, 97% of companies in the study found the software is critical, okay? They get it. We all know software is needed, especially with labor shortages and everybody aging out of the industry, right? You're not gonna make that up with just working harder, right? You have to work smarter. But 77% of high-performing projects are using software. Well, that's good news, but what about the other 23% that aren't, right? Yikes for those folks that are reliant on those consultants. 44% of PMs in the study do not use any software. None, okay? And that's PwC is a very good bellwether, canary in the mine shaft track of our industry. So that's no fooling, folks. That's pretty staggering, right? With $100 billion invested in the US, the trend is that $122 million is wasted due to lacking project performance. Again, driven by that poor use, poor integration of software, right? So again, talking in terms of the digital transformation, we've got a chance here to really get our act together with this huge capital investment. I think we have to look at tools and again, study tools at the essence, they need to solve a need or address a problem, right? They need to be simple. They need to be able to explain it to the user, to the person that you're delivering it to. If it doesn't make sense or it takes too many slides or too long to discuss it, it's not a good tool, right? I mean, it just needs to be like the first time you ever held an iPad, right? Intuitive, easy to use, spectacular user interface, right? That's kind of the bar that we're looking for. But in the long game, you really have to have integration because there's really no silver bullet. There's not one tool or one ring to rule them all, right? You have to have that flexibility, and it's really incumbent upon our software vendor friends like Trimble and the likes, that they really have to make their systems built so that they can integrate with other tools to make them more effective. Because every project is unique, and you buy the tool that's going to get you closest there. But I think in the future, you need to start with a good brand name base. But then from there, you have to be open to the new innovators, right? The ones that can bridge the gap or really carry you over the line and things that you didn't think you needed when you started the program. So very exciting times for our industry.
Agreed. You know, those are incredible statistics. It's kind of hard to believe that there's that many projects that don't have the right set of tools in place. But I've been in this industry a long time, so it's a little bit easier for me maybe to see that. You know, I've always heard the old adage, there's absolutely no problem that Excel can't solve poorly, right? So Joe, you've got kind of, I think, a unique perspective coming from Trimble. Trimble's now, I think, the largest provider of software and construction technology in the world. What are you seeing from a Trimble standpoint that's new, that's groundbreaking, that's headed in the right direction, that's going to change this digital transformation trajectory that we're on?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I also think it's an exciting question, although I would have preferred that they use the term digital transformation 2.0. Digital transformation started years ago, and most organizations have done some level of digital transformation. The question really that piques my interest is, it has nothing to do with the technology or the solutions that you choose. It has to do with the data that's gathered, the connectivity of the workflows between the phases of capital construction and delivery. And how you can partner with an organization to extract that data out, implement the workflow, and define what the real value is of the technology that you choose to deploy. I'll give you an example. One of the things that we've done, we've got about $1 trillion in active construction on our platform today, capital construction. We're exploring how we can transform that data and offer it to our clients for analysis and review. I'm not talking about just your data. I'm talking about combining everybody's data into a database that you can then use to make informed decisions on your own projects. One simple example would be, if you did an analysis of your contingency spend on your projects, what would it tell you? Can you get better at predicting contingency use across your programs? Well, I can assure you, thank you. I can assure you that if you blend your data with other organizations just like you, who may or may not be doing projects in the same region or the same zip code, is that I can display to you contingency information that is going to help you perform better on your projects from a planning perspective, from an execution perspective, and from an operations perspective. So we're really looking at what digital transformation means 5 years from now. We're not focusing on today, or we're not focusing on yesterday's solutions. You'd be amazed at how many organizations I talk with today that ask me, can your system do RFIs? Okay, the RFI situation was solved 25 years ago, right? But some organizations are coming up to speed on it. And real quickly, just going back to the data portion of it, right? There is this data fidelity thing that occurs between the phases of planning and designing and delivering your capital construction projects. If you can envision a series of curves that go up in knowledge and data capture, and then all of a sudden when that project moves to the next phase, that fidelity drops way down. And it has to be rebuilt again, and then it drops way down when you go into construction. It has to be rebuilt again when you go into the operations phase.
So from a workflow perspective and a data perspective, that's the key, is connecting and reducing that fidelity loss of your data and your knowledge and your decision-making ability across the entire life cycle of an asset. So.
Matt, one exciting addition in the funding realm, FHWA, they are leading the charge with the accelerated innovation deployment. It's $100 million of funding basically to update tools, platforms, and system architecture in the roadway space. So that's
Another great piece of news there. Syed, I'm curious, if you look at this industry, if you look at the infrastructure industry and you look particularly at airports, there are some really great challenges out there that you have to take on. What do you see as one of those big challenges, and what do you see as maybe a potential solution for addressing one of the biggest challenges in digital transformation?
That's a very good question. So every passenger, every movement that happens at an airport, whatever we do at the airport is constantly generating terabytes of data. What are we doing with that data? Nothing. It's just getting lost. And that is now, this is an opportunity for us, the airports, to capture all that data, put that data to the best use, whether it be in construction, in planning, in operations. And there are systems out there. It's just that airports don't have the will, the manpower, or the time to invest into those systems. We are working on a system where we are capturing data real time from various sources and creating dashboards. We are getting our managers to make information based or decisions based on data rather than decisions based on gut. And it's taking some time, it's taking some education. And our biggest challenge again is how do we use that data? How do we make the best use of what's available out there?
I think that's a key point. You're talking about how much time and effort it takes and the commitment it takes to put together a solution set that's going to address all these problems, to leverage this data and really do something with it. And I'm reminded of the old adage, Abraham Lincoln says, I've got 8 hours to chop down a tree. I'm going to spend the first 7 hours sharpening my axe, right? You guys have $1 billion, multi-billion, maybe, I don't know, terminal coming up. Now's the time, right? It's something like Daryl said with, the COVID pandemic. The time for airports to have gotten to work was then, right? We look at LaGuardia and the transformation that airport made. They were lucky, right? It was just a timing thing, right? They were in the right place at the right time, getting construction going. As the pandemic hits, traffic drops, and man, they just kept on going. And it's amazing. If you guys haven't been to LaGuardia, it's a little longer walk now than it used to be. It used to be so close. You get there, you get out of your car, and you're to the gate in a couple of minutes. You get a little exercise, you get your steps in when you go to LaGuardia these days. So, Daryl, what do you see as next up for airports? What are you guys going to be taking on as far as a big challenge, especially with regard to infrastructure and construction and things that you might be addressing there?
Sure. So I mentioned, I want to go back to the data piece that Syed was mentioning. We've all talked a lot about data, big data, lots of data. One of the things we have to be conscious of when we talk about data, particularly when I'm talking about systems that are, we're taking data from a lot of different systems. Some of them are, some of them aren't. If I wanted an on-prem solution, we used to everything was on premises. Now, so much of it's in the cloud. There are a lot of situations where even if I wanted an on-prem solution, it doesn't exist, I can't buy it. But believe me, whenever the bad actors out there are hearing us talk about data, lots of data, big data, you are a target. So we always have to be considering our cyber posture as well. For us moving forward, our biggest challenge is definitely the Curb to Gate program I mentioned. It's enabling that technology using single token biometrics to improve that process all the way through. The challenge with that is that's an end-to-end process, as Syed mentioned. The goal is from the time you walk into the airport, heck, even backing up, the time you order your Uber, it's all part of the process to when you get off the airplane and have a meal delivered to you. That all goes into it. But there's a tremendous amount of collaboration required in those processes. So the ones I mentioned before, check-in, that's the airlines. The airlines have to be ready in their back-end systems to be able to take that facial, token. You go. So today we're enabled, we can do it, but the airlines have to adopt it. The one that's way out front has traditionally been Delta. You see those pilots in Atlanta and Detroit, and they prove the concept. I joke sometimes it's okay to be number two, because number one spends a whole lot of money. But that's one, the next piece of the process, once you drop your bag is that checkpoint. It's a whole different entity there, that's TSA. They're much further behind on the pilot, but they are out there. And then, our other federal partner, then you go back to the airline, on the outbound process for the gate, and then our other federal partner is CBP, Customs and Border Protection, for both inbound and outbound customs. But there's other ones in between there as well that are part of that process. It's just a matter of time before we go to a facial token for your credit card, and so there's a concessions process in there as well. Those are the challenges I see. It's that collaboration that we have to have between all of these different partners. And unfortunately, there's an adage in our industry, if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. I have 3 airports, and even those don't look a whole lot alike. So.
Very good. So we got a few minutes left here. We've got some aviation and technology experts on the stage. I don't know if anybody has a question or two for these guys, but I'd be happy to take one of those. We got one over here.
I'm Joel, that's the lead survey. I had a question. I'm interested in what Saeed was talking about. The digital twinning of the airport facility with the sensors, the network together to communicate with one another. How are you creating a solid model of your existing facilities? Are you just using as-built or new laser scanning? How is that being brought to life?
We at San Antonio haven't started that process as yet, but from what I have researched, it's mostly done using scanners, lasers, in addition to as-built. So they are being layered on each other. There are many areas where you can't really get any lasers to go through a piping system that's going up through here. You can't really use lasers, so that's where we are going for as-built. Our airport was first built, or the first terminal was built in 1983. I want to make it sound more ancient. So we don't have everything. We'll have to open up a few panels to see what's over there and start modeling it that way as well, doing some visual scans.
Syed, if I may, one suggestion would maybe be to follow what FHWA is doing. They're actually using the digital twin as the contract. They've done it with 15 projects already, and it's been successful. Basically, you start in the digital platform with design, and what they do is they involve the stakeholders so that they pick tools that folks are comfortable with in that particular market segment or whatever they're working on in that project, so that it's seamless, right? From day one, they don't have to replicate data. It just goes right in. You start with the design, you start, right off, there's no inefficiencies, let's say. So
I see how that would work with new construction, but you're talking about kind of.
Renovation does always pose its own challenges, correct?
I got you. Modeling of the scans and that stuff, get better and better, things are go quicker, I guess would be the answer.
Hi, Benjamin Hayes, Houston Public Works. San Antonio, you got all this data about all your passengers and what they're doing, and Houston, you got all this data about what your passengers are doing. Are you talking to each other? Are the airports throughout Texas talking to each other?
I'll take it first. So just before coming here, I was in the adjacent hall, and it was an airports association meeting where we're talking to each other on innovative technologies, what we can do, how we can use, partner together. So we constantly talk with each other. My boss, who's an ex-Houston Airports COO, is currently Jesus Science, yes, is currently over here attending a Texas Commercial Airports Association meeting. So they constantly talk to each other, continuously,
Sharing data.
sharing data.
So the best example of sharing information, well, that I can think of is probably on the air side with diversions, because, you know, we have a weather event at DFW, or we have a weather event in Houston. It's interesting, you know, you go back to Storm Uri, that's the first time that, you know, one of the reasons the grid fell was because southern part of the state and northern part of the state couldn't support each other because they were all impacted. But when you have a weather event, we immediately start getting diversions from DFW. There's a lot of thunderstorms up there. And the airlines don't necessarily tell us when it's coming. So, you know, we're relying on the airport for that. And the short answer is we don't do a good enough job of it. But to Saya's point, the industry is very, very close knit. And even though we compete for airlines, we compete for traffic, but it is a very collaborative environment, and the two big associations, AAA and ACI, a ton of collaboration there. There has been some discussion about the CBRS. What I was talking about is coming up, the airport's coming up with a CBRS model that, you know, any air carrier can use, you know, that for their underwing services. So they can subscribe to one service and get it anywhere they go. But no, we need to do a much better job.
Good.
Ken, I don't know if you can see it or not from where you're sitting, but these people look hungry.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll let you go on up and dismiss us to lunch. And thank you for everybody for your attention. And well done today.